When I married Ken, I thought I was stepping into a second chance at happiness. For him, for his young son Mark, and for me. Their house, nestled at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac, seemed unassuming enough. But from the very beginning, it felt like something or someone was watching me. I brushed it off as nerves. After all, this was Lily's house, the late wife who had once made it a home. I wasn't here to replace her, just to create a new chapter. For the first few months, things went smoothly, better than I could have hoped. Mark warmed to me almost immediately, and we spent hours reading bedtime stories, playing board games, and bonding over his favourite mac and cheese recipe. When he started calling me Mom, my heart swelled. But then came the night that changed everything. It was a calm evening, the kind that lulls you into a false sense of security. I was tucking Mark into bed, the soft glow of his nightlight painting the room in golden hues. Just as I kissed his forehead and started to stand, he grabbed my hand. "Mum?" His voice was quiet, almost hesitant. "Yes, sweetheart?" His wide, innocent eyes locked onto mine, but there was something unsettling in his expression. Something far too serious for a boy his age. "My real mum still lives here." I froze, caught between a nervous laugh and an uneasy silence. "Oh, Mark, your mum will always live in your heart," I said, brushing his hair back gently. But he shook his head, his grip tightening around my fingers. "No," he whispered. "She's here, in the house. I see her sometimes." A chill crawled up my spine, spreading like ice through my chest. "You see her?" I asked, my voice barely audible. He nodded solemnly. "She watches me. She says you shouldn't touch her things." I left his room that night with my heart pounding in my ears. I wanted to tell myself it was just a child's imagination, but deep down I knew something wasn't right. At first I tried to ignore it, but then little things around the house started to shift. Small, seemingly innocuous details that gnawed at the edges of my sanity. Toys I'd carefully put away reappeared in the middle of the living room, arranged as though someone had been playing with them. The kitchen cabinets I'd reorganized kept reverting to their old layout, the one Lily had used. I even found Lily's photograph, which I'd moved to a less prominent spot, back on the mantel as though it had never been touched. I asked Ken about it one evening, trying to sound casual. "Are you moving things around the house?" He chuckled, but the laugh sounded hollow. "No, Sarah. Why would I do that?" I wanted to believe him, but the unease wouldn't leave me. It felt like the house was rejecting me, pushing me out, erasing my presence. The breaking point came one night when Mark and I were working on a puzzle in the living room. He was focused, his little hands moving pieces with precision, when he suddenly stopped and looked up at me. "Mom says you shouldn't move her picture," he said, his voice eerily calm. My breath caught in my throat. "Mark, what do you mean?" "She likes it on the mantel," he replied simply, turning back to the puzzle as if he hadn't just dropped a bombshell. I didn't sleep that night. The house felt alive, its silence oppressive, its shadows too deep. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, was watching me. The next day, I confronted Ken. "Something is happening in this house," I said, my voice trembling. "Mark keeps talking about Lily and—" "I know," he interrupted, his voice tight. I stared at him, stunned. "You know?" He looked away, his jaw clenched. "I didn't want to scare you, Sarah, but I've noticed things too. The smell of her perfume, lights turning on in empty rooms. And Mark, he talks to her sometimes, as if she's really here." "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, my voice cracking. "Because I thought I was losing my mind," he snapped before softening. "I didn't want to burden you. But now?" He trailed off, and I knew he was as scared as I was. We decided to set up a camera in Mark's room, desperate for answers. For 2 nights, nothing happened. But on the 3rd night, just after midnight, we saw her. The footage was grainy, but the figure was unmistakable. A faint, glowing silhouette that hovered near Mark's bed. She leaned down, her hand brushing the blanket as though tucking him in. Then she turned to the camera, Her face was serene, but her eyes burned with a sadness so deep it seemed to reach through the screen. And then she vanished. The next morning I sat Mark down, my hands trembling. "Mark, sweetheart, can you tell me about your mom when you see her?" He looked at me with those same wide, knowing eyes. "She's here all the time. She says she's watching over me." I swallowed hard. Does she say anything about me?" Mark hesitated, then nodded. "She said you're good for us, but she doesn't like it when you change things. She says it's still her house." For weeks, I felt like I was walking on eggshells. The house was no longer just a home. It was a battleground between the past and the present. I started leaving Lily's things untouched, her photograph on the mantel, her favorite arrangement in the kitchen. And slowly, the strange occurrences began to lessen. One evening, as I tucked Mark into bed, he whispered, "Mum said she's happy you're here. She says she trusts you now." Tears filled my eyes as I kissed his forehead. In time, the house found a fragile harmony. Lily's presence never fully left, but it softened, becoming less intrusive and more protective. We learned to coexist, her love for Mark blending with mine, creating a family that straddled the line between the living and the departed. And though I still feel her sometimes, a faint brush of air, the scent of her perfume, I no longer fear her. Because I know she's not here to haunt us. She's here to love him, to watch over him, just as I am. Even in death, a mother's love never fades as love. If you enjoyed this chilling story, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and leave a comment below telling us where you're watching from. We'd love to know. Hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss more spine-tingling stories like this one. And don't keep the scares to yourself. Share this video with your friends and family who love a good creepy tale. Your support helps us bring you even more haunting and fascinating interesting events and content.